Richard Serrett's Strange Planet. Following the truth wherever it leads. Exposing evil and corruption and the secret machinations of powerful elites. Revealing the high strangeness beneath the surface of our supposed reality. Coming to you from the Great White North and his studio beneath the stairs. Here's Richard.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the program. And if you're in New Jersey, New York, anywhere along the eastern seaboard that was hammered by Sandy, might give such a destructive, horrible, calamitous weather force such a innocuous, lovely name. Ironic, isn't it? Again, welcome to the program. We're going to talk about Hurricane Sandy. But before we do, I just wanted to mention this to you. This is something I just learned. My lovely bride, the mighty Aphrodite, she has family down in New Jersey, on the Jersey Shore. They have a place on Bradley Beach, which is just, I believe, south of Asbury Park. And luckily, their place was, either side of them, they had their basements were flooded, but they're right perched in the middle, and they were dry, thankfully. But most importantly, of course, they're safe. So Asbury Park, of course, got hammered, and that is, of course, the city that gave us the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Now, one of his first albums, I believe, was Greetings from Asbury Park. And the title track, Asbury Park, the subtitle, do you know this story, Tim? I just learned this the other day. I was driving around and they played this song on the radio, and I got the backstory. The subtitle of Asbury Park is called Sandy. And here's Bruce Springsteen singing about, I guess, unrequited love for this girl, Sandy. I don't know the story of the song, but is that a coincidence or what? Wow. All right. Let's talk about Hurricane Sandy and whether or not there's more coming this way. Just prior to Hurricane Sandy, we had an earthquake and what could have been a tsunami out on the West Coast. That was kind of a surprise. I can't remember the last time we had, what was that, like a 7.4 or something off the coast of BC? That could have been a calamity. And I've got family out there, and I know many of you listening have too. But is that a dress rehearsal for something else coming our way? So let's talk about earth changes. What can we expect in the future? In the immediate future? Sitting opposite me is a dear friend of the program, best known as a trance clairvoyant, also called Canada's Edgar Cayce. He's a spiritual healer, teacher, published author. He demonstrates many abilities studied by noetic sciences, including clairvoyance, telepathy, energy healing, remote viewing, which is why we've sat him down here tonight, prediction and prophecy. And he's got a new book out. Let me just grab the copy of that here so that I make sure I have the title correct. It's called The New Renaissance, A Prophecy of 2012 and Beyond, now in its second printing. A great pleasure to welcome back to The Conspiracy Show a good friend, Douglas James Cottrell. Douglas, how are you?
Fantastic, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here again. As I've watched your career grow and see the audience that you've built, it's a pleasure to come back and be with you again.
Well, you've been part of this family and my extended radio family for many years before I was in front of the microphone, so it's always great to have you here. Let me ask you first, as a remote viewer, as a trance clairvoyant, when you see things that happened just recently and I'm talking Hurricane Sandy, do you sort of nod your head sort of solemnly and say, yep, there's more of that coming?
Well, Richard, the temptation to say I told you so is always there, but I never do. We've been on your show many times and in other stations where we've talked about earth changes. I think I was one of the first people to have a vision and actually announce on your show that the Earth's core was spinning at a different speed than the surface or the Earth's crust. We've talked about the alignment of planets, which is coming up on November the 28th, which is a V shape with the sun behind the Earth. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly the date on the 28th, but this is the vision I've had where the Earth is pulled in two different directions at about a 45-degree angle with the sun behind it and a lunar eclipse taking place at the same time. The things that I've seen in the future and the things that we've predicted are coming true. And some of the things we said back in the middle 80s and in certainly the 90s about this time, 2012, I don't believe that the world is going to end in December, just before Christmas. Matter of fact, when I was in Poland recently, I had almost 1,000 people for my lecture, and someone asked that question. They were terrified of what's going to happen. My response automatically was the sun will come up and the sun will go down on the 21st of December.
So what you're seeing has nothing necessarily to do with Mayan prophecy, or they may dovetail in some degree, but you're not saying that this has to do with Mayan prophecy and December 21, all hell's going to break loose.
Well, exactly in the book, we talk about this as a renovation time, and that's why we call it the New Renaissance. This is 2012 and beyond. You know, the world is going to be here in 2013, etc. But the problem is that this is what's going on now. I've had people criticize me a little, friendly criticism, saying, well, what happens if the things in your book don't happen? And someone remarked on my behalf and said, well, just listen to the news. Greenland is melting. The surface of the glacier or the ice cap on Greenland is melting. In the South Arctic, Antarctica, we've had huge chunks of ice breaking off, and remember that Manhattan Island-size iceberg that was floating around in the south. We've had all these things changing. In Spain, the circumstances of earthquakes there, and not too long ago near Huelva or the southwest, there was this fear that tsunami was going to come over and wipe out the New England coast of America. If you look around, these things are happening right now, and these are things I've said in the book. This is not a book of dread, and it's not a book of earth changes we're going to fall apart. It's a book of hope, what's going to happen beyond this time. But these circumstances are happening now. Just look in the news and you can see that as we come to this crucial point in December, that there is a leading up and then there is going to be a follow-through after. And it's like a line in the sand that the source that we use in the deep trance meditation, my intuition, we just call it the source, has been talking about for years and years, that this is an important time. This is also, a couple of years ago, I was on your show and we talked about this when Pluto is coming through the constellation of Capricorn. Every time this happens, and I'm not an astrologer and I don't mean to sound like one, but every time this happens, a renaissance happens in the world. The last time this happened, the American Revolution took place. Things are changing on all levels. Theology, science, medical procedures. We're now looking at a cure for AIDS. We're looking at, this Boson-Watts God particle thing has come through. We're looking at the small world like we are looking in the big world, or the microcosm's the same as the macrocosm. And so a lot of really important discoveries are happening. However, Sandy came through, surprised the heck out of everybody. We're having spontaneous weather experiences around the world. And as I said on your show, I think it was just a year or two ago, where I talked about the oceans heating up, and this is the main cause. This goes back to the prediction that the Earth's core is spinning at a different speed than the surface. It's like friction.
Just to clarify, excuse me, Douglas. Al Gore tried to pin Sandy on global warming.
It's not the case at all. No. My book not only talks, in the book we talk about these things, not only what's going to happen, but like no one else, we explain why they're happening. Remember on your show, I challenged Dr. Suzuki to see if the Earth's core was going to be spinning at a different speed than the surface. Well, it is, and that's why we're having volcanic activity all over the world. We've had earthquakes going up in Lake Ontario all the way to Montreal. There's been earthquake activity in Montreal, which I think on your show last time I was here, we talked about the volcanoes that are sitting there in the South Shore. We've talked about the experiences on the West Coast, what's happening in Japan. We've talked about different parts of the world being flooded, Africa's coastline shrinking, the Atlantic rising, the Mediterranean coming up. But
the Earth is always in flux, right? It's always changing. Mm-hmm. We're always experiencing extreme weather. The only thing certain about the weather is that it's uncertain. Mm. So what's changed, and where are we going with this? Where is this leading? Some catastrophic event?
It is. We've had visions of the Earth wobbling on its axis and even changing its direction. In other words, we rotate from, if you will, towards the east now, and I think it's going to rotate the other way. The sun will rise from the west instead of the east. Not only am I seeing...
For that to happen, though, you're talking about... that's not even a pole shift. I mean, I don't know what that is, but that's going to cause major biblical devastation. Yeah, billions of people dead.
The oceans are going to rock out of their basins. And this is not me talking. Nostradamus said this. Velikovsky was talking about this. The world's gone through 3, if not 4, previous world destructions. And this is what's going to happen in our time. The volcanic ash from the sky is going to be the worst because things won't grow, transportation will stop, water will be polluted. Again, these are things that are happening right now. The oceans are going to rise. Why? Because the ice caps are melting. The ice caps are melting. What's that going to cause? The planet's going to wobble and be unstable. And right now, there's a 40-degree wobble in the Earth right now. The magnetic Earth pole shift is changing. The geographical pole is wobbling as well.
Just hold on. We'll take a time out, come back. Douglas James Cottrell, trance, clairvoyant, healer, Canada's Edgar Cayce, the man with X-ray eyes, and he's remote viewed into our future. Something wicked this way comes, perhaps, and you can get on board with the conversation. We'll make the phone lines available to you as well if you'd like to discuss Earth changes, and we'll also get into the U.S. election and what that might portend. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. Don't go away.
The truth will set you free. But first, it will really tick you off. Welcome back to Richard Syrett's Strange Planet.
Welcome back. Our catastrophic Earth changes, war, global depression, civil unrest in our future. Well, some say the future has arrived. The question is there more of that coming? And will these storms intensify? We had an earthquake off the coast of British Columbia. Was that a dress rehearsal? Again, we got off light. Very little damage. No fatalities. No injuries. Is there more coming this way? Douglas James Cottrell is with us, remote viewer, deep trance, clairvoyant, healer. And Douglas, you were telling me during the break that you've had a dream in which you saw the Earth essentially upside down.
It seemed to be. There was a current of water going around the Earth. I saw 4 continents kind of poking themselves up. And I said in the dream, or somebody said to me in the dream, or this vision, this was the North Atlantic or the North Sea. Now, it doesn't happen that way in our world. If we have the North Pole, where the Canadian islands and Greenland are, it just doesn't look that way. But if we take the planet and we turn it upside down, we have South America, we have Australia, we have Africa, all 4 continents, if you will, pointing down. I only named 3, but there seemed to be 4 in this vision. And there was an open channel of water going around. That can only occur if the planet is upside down. Now, again, this was a vision I had. My visions usually come true, and I'm not sure when this is going to happen. Tomorrow or 200 years from now. So everybody is sitting tight, relax about that. But the stage is set. The ice caps are melting. We're losing our stabilizing influences. It's like a top spinning on the table. If you put a weight off the top, off balance, the top wobbles and will flip over. This could happen with the shift in the oceans.
And you're not the only one that's had this vision, correct?
This is true. Paul Solomon, the famous sleeping prophet of Edgar Cayce fame, at the same time he was alive with Ross Peterson, who was my mentor. And Edgar Cayce has seen this. Nostradamus has mentioned these things. There are other people who have talked about huge waves coming over the ocean. Velikovsky was a famous scientist who said this is why all the dinosaurs were caught along the mountain ranges and why you found the caches of bones, because this has happened before. There are websites now, if you track them, the amount of volcanic activity and earthquake activity is enormous around the world. Look what happened in Japan, and we've forgotten about it. There are things happening in Spain and Italy and many other places that are now, Etna is going off. By the way, this is the key for me. If I see Etna and Vesuvius go off at the same time, then I know the door is closed and we don't have a chance. Now the countdown happens with earthquakes speeding up around the world. If there is a war in Turkey, this is another key that we're now failing and we can't retreat. The Hopi Indians...
Why is that a key, Turkey?
Something a long time ago, other people, including myself, have seen that Turkey, either a nuclear war or an atomic blast or something was going to start in Turkey and then it was going to spread out around the world.
Turkey's the linchpin, not Iran.
This is true.
Interesting. Now, let me ask you something. Again, the earth flipping upside down, essentially, in your vision and others, other sleeping prophets having this vision. How does anyone survive, walk away from that? I mean, are there any safe zones if something like that would happen?
Yes, apparently. The four corners in the U.S., this is New Mexico and Colorado down that way. Canada is perfectly safe except for the West Coast, which I believe is going to disappear, including Alaska. I had a voice, an angel, something, if you will, tell me that everything west of the Rockies, including the Jewel of the North. And it took me weeks to figure out Jewel of the North meant not Vancouver Island, but Alaska itself. And if you look at the fault lines scientifically, you can see these things are happening. When when there was an earthquake last time in Japan, Japan actually separated further, something like 1.3 meters, I'm guessing at the exact measurement, actually separated from North America. If we look at the land masses in the south and near Argentina, there is a huge land mass east of the tip of Argentina that is ready to come up. We look at the floor of the Mediterranean, and it's rising. People in Spain, where I've been many times, I've been in Argentina and Spain and Poland, and I travel a lot. People around the world are having these warning dreams that this is going to happen. But to answer your question directly, Edgar Cayce said it best. Stay away from the coast, the east coast of America, 200 miles, or a certain height above sea level, and you'll be safe. I've seen the White House, and I've said this on your show before,
yes,
completely washed out, and the sewers backed up, and the poor people in there. What does that mean? It means that the White House will be abandoned. And if you look, the Potomac, and you look at the East Coast, you could see a tsunami coming up there to wipe this out. It was amazingly.
Well, I've had some people on the show talking about how they have seen documents and have heard from people inside the U.S. government who have leaked information to them, talking about how the U.S. government is quietly and quickly preparing for such an eventuality, moving entire departments away from the coast, inland, without any, they haven't talked about it, any publicity, it hasn't been in the media, relocating libraries and then of course in Norway we have this
the big seed cache.
The seed cache, the Ark, they're calling it. So the government knows that this is happening. So obviously it would tend to suggest that it's more imminent than something far off in the future.
I believe that's true, Richard. With all my heart. I'm not a fatalist. I'm not someone that makes irrational comments. I take responsibility, the same as yourself. And I've been quietly saying these things for decade or two that they're coming, but now we believe there's an urgency. You should be prepared. The book talks about how to be prepared. The book talks about how we can avoid situations like this through our spiritual consciousness being raised. But I agree, and it's every time I hear of something that looks very suspicious, like the long gun registry in our land has been repelled. Why? Perhaps that's in preparation for some violence that's going to come in the future. I look at the Americans the same as you've just said very astutely. They are moving things inland. The East Coast is terribly susceptible to tsunami and flooding, the same as the West Coast, right down the West Coast of the Rockies. And if we look at the earthquake activity, we can see that the world is just ready to explode.
What's the day after going to look like? I mean, this is something that would take hundreds of years to recover from, I'm guessing.
Well, we addressed that. People asked that. Our friend Chris, who's in the studio here, might have asked that one time. What's going to happen in 2013 or whenever after this situation occurs? We have had Americans who have likewise have had visions or dreams, and they lived on the East Coast are looking to move inland. I'm not trying to defer to ordinary people, but if ordinary people all over the world are having the same type of dream, this must be something in the race consciousness. It must be the divine preparing us. The day after will be that the East Coast will everybody will survive. I mean, the places will survive. We're not going to be sunk and gone and underwater. But after the rocking of the oceans, there will be, as Edgar Casey predicted about Virginia Beach, the East Coast, his facility will be in ruins. And that's why they have their records in a vault so they can be found after the day after, if you will.
But billions, I'm guessing. There are 7 billion souls on this planet. Billions will be lost.
Well, I predicted that a huge percentage of people will be lost, and I believe that some of the predictions when the children in Fatima, I think, had those visions of the lady, the last prophecy is that we might have a third of the people gone from the earth.
This is the third secret, you believe?
I think so. This is what my information is, and my intuition is taking me that way. Certainly, I had a vision of Africa shrinking, the same continent size and shape, but shrinking. That means that the coastline of Africa will be submerged. Edgar Casey talked about the battlefields in Europe being underwater. When I was in Poland, my interpreter had a vision of a tsunami coming down from the north and basically flooding the North Sea or the north part of Poland. My son had a vision where there was something happened in the Caribbean, and a liner a cruise liner was put up on shore. That would be an enormous amount of water shifting and moving. We should be aware of these things. But again, pay attention to the volcanoes. When the volcanoes go off, the ash coming down will stop a lot of things. Traffic, growing seasons, and I'm saying to be prepared. Have a 6-month supply, have some sort of water supply, because the water will be the greatest tragedy of all. We won't have fresh water.
Before we get to that natural cataclysm, I mean, one has to even wonder, will we survive to get to that point, given all of the other storms that are brewing out there, and I'm talking about the financial meltdown. I mean, this recovery, if you want to call it that, sputtering along. There are many minds brighter than mine who are suggesting that we're getting ready to go back down for another recession. This could be a double dip recession. We're talking about massive food prices, increases in food prices next year because of droughts and so forth, and the civil unrest that could bring, and depression, and the debt crisis in Europe, and I mean, are we going to even survive as a people to get to this economic or this next cataclysm? What do you see happening in terms of the economy in the future?
Well, I've said on your show before, we're going to have superinflation. And I believe after the election that there will be increase in all the commodities, which are being suppressed artificially now. That's my opinion. What I've seen is interest rates going up more than they were ever before. And I've been on your show years ago. We talked about 25%, 22% interest rates. And I also predicted on your show the interest rates will go down to 2 or 3%. That's happened. The next prediction is that they'll go up more. The interest rates will be more than what they ever were before. We're going to survive this. The reason that these situations or calamities are coming is because, you have to pay the piper. The world is winding down through all the corruption and the greed that is taking place, the lack of caring, the lack of compassion. The Hopi Indians predicted that we had an opportunity of the world going into 2 futures, 2 timelines. One, that we could survive this and we could avoid a lot of these difficulties or catastrophes. And the other is that we spiral down into despair. And so what's going to happen is that just like the hurricane that came through here in the end of the 80s, 1988 or whenever it was, 86, 88, after disasters, what happened? The world recovered. There was a boom in the economy. And I think this is what's going to happen. Through these tragedies, the world will never, ever be the same as it was now. We'll have a whole movement forward to help each other. And the military, as opposed to, spiritually speaking, the pendulum swings one way and then it swings back equally and opposite the other way. As much as the military has been involved in taking lives and destruction, the military will be our way out. These will be the group of people who have the resources, the manpower, the know-how, the capability to rescue us, which will make the biblical prophecy of the military turning their weapons into plowshares come true. The idea,
rescue us how? I mean, some see militarization as part of the problem, and the saber rattling in the Middle East, and this unseen hand that I see operating in the Middle East, and using Arabs and Jews as bloody battering rams against each other for what end purpose? I have no idea. I don't pretend to understand it. But how do you see the military as being our savior?
Somebody has to rescue us. And who, above all people in the world, would do that? They have ships and planes. We have resources, transportation, young men, highly trained. This is the only group of people on the face of the planet that could help us in the various countries, yes. So they'll stop fighting. If you ever notice it, if you look at some natural disaster, always seems to come along when imminent warfare is about to take place, or soon thereafter there's a natural disaster. Always, if you compare, you'll see that as nature rebels. And I think this is how they're going to help us. We are going to have to move massive amounts of resources from one place to another, which of course brings in this cooperative effort, talking now more in a spiritual way, why these circumstances are going to happen. We talk about the law of one, and we talk about gaining back from this darkness into the light. And the situation is now going to be fortuitous because this is a renovation time. The world is going to be different than it is now. I've seen it. It's a wonderful place.
All right, we'll come back and continue to discuss the new Renaissance with Douglas James Cottrell. Earth changes coming our way, and we'll also get to your phones. If you've got a line, hold on to it. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. Stay with us.
This is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. Follow Richard on Twitter at Richard Syrett. For show information, visit the website strangeplanet.ca.
And for those of you who are, bailing out and digging out from under Sandy, I'm guessing that tonight's show is maybe not exactly the remedy you were looking for, but hopefully what the things that Douglas Cottrell has seen in visions are off in the future, way in the future. No way to tell, really. Perhaps I'm wrong, maybe he'll correct me, but we are talking about earth changes coming our way, and whether Sandy was merely a dress rehearsal. Is there more of this to come? Will these storms intensify? Douglas says yes, there will be a major cataclysmic event, something akin to a pole shift. Billions will be lost, but the key, as many of the great sleeping prophets, Edgar Cayce and others have said, is to get thee inland, about 200 miles. Get a hold of some good old-fashioned Canadian shield, I guess. Now, let's grab some phone calls here. Lisa is in Woodstock, Ontario tonight. Lisa, welcome to The Conspiracy Show.
Oh, hi, Richard. I was calling in. It's a very interesting show. I have been hearing on the radio Major Ed Dames, who's a military-trained remote viewer in the United States. His remote viewing team apparently has remote viewed a kill shot from the sun sometime in 2013, and I was wondering what Mr. Cottrell's view was on that.
By a kill shot, you mean a major coronal mass ejection?
Absolutely.
Okay. Douglas?
Well, last December, November, December, we had a similar thing where I predicted 6 sunspots in a straight line, and they were very much occurred that time. And the plasma from the sun and what happened to the Earth was it basically wiped out our shield. And that particular time, I was shaking myself. I didn't know what was going on until this evidence that there was this effect from the sun happened. I've not seen this kill shot from the sun, but I have said and predicted more such activity as we experienced last December. So I would think something major is going to happen again, and it might, as I'm looking now in my mind, I can see the Earth start to wobble because of this magnetic gravitational pushing away from the planet. And I think this might start to wobble or have a severe wobble. This is what I'm looking at right now.
All right, Lisa, thank you in Woodstock for that. Bill is in Hamilton, Ontario. Bill, you're up next. Welcome to The Conspiracy Show.
Yes, Dr. Cottrell, I find your theories fascinating. Is there any location that you have where one could come and have a reading?
You mean to see me?
Yes.
Well, we have the Hamilton Beach Center at 180 Beach Boulevard in Hamilton, Ontario. And, they can check the website, douglasjamescottrell.com, and there's more information on that. And we have lots of things going on at the center, too. and people can come and talk to some of our healing community, and they can ask questions at that time.
Thank you for the call, Bill in Hamilton. You mentioned to me that at the center in Hamilton, when Hurricane Sandy was bearing down, what were you doing, you and your group?
Well, the Sunday before, we had a spiritual service. We have a Sunday service for people who are like-minded to us. And at somewhere during the service, we decided to put our hands in the air. And as your colleague George here felt that healing energy a year or two ago when he was going home, and he felt that warm energy that cooked him a little bit, surprised him, I think. If you're listening, George, God bless you. That we put our hands in the air and we pushed energy towards Sandy to keep it away from the beach. It was on track to go right over Niagara Falls and come for us. And as you know, it went further south of the lakes, and we basically had very little effect on the beach. There was some wind, there was some rain, but there was no effects that happened in like many other places.
So you're saying mass consciousness, the power of intention, can steer these hurricanes around?
Well, more than that, it's this energy. This is why I believe the Hopi Indians were telling this, so we can change the world with this healing energy, with this invisible force that can be demonstrated. This is why miracles happen and why pain and suffering goes away in bodies in an expeditious way. But when you have a group of people and you actually put up a barrier, you push energy towards, you can affect nature. And I teach a class on how to make clouds disappear by looking at them. That happens. We can photographic proof of it.
Cloud bursting.
Yeah, yes, and many people do this. So many people can get together and push the energy away, and I'm sure the Indian, if you will, rainmakers have that in the reverse way, where they can cause atmospheric precipitation. But the point is that this is what we were doing, and you call me deluded, call me superstitious.
I would never call you deluded.
Thank you. This happened. The storm went away from us, but it was bearing down on us, and many people called up, and friends from all over California and Europe were saying, get out of town. This is coming right at you.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. If it's possible to, through the power of intention, you think about this and we'll go into a break and you'll answer on the other side. Is it, if it's possible to direct, through the power of intention or prayer, whatever you want to call it, a storm out of harm's way, are there perhaps those with slightly more malevolent intent, not slightly more, greatly more in malevolently intent, who will steer a hurricane into harm's way? Are those people out there? We'll discuss on the other side. Douglas James Cottrell, here on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serra.
The truth goes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. You're listening to Richard Serra's Strange Planet.
Welcome back. The author of The New Renaissance is with us, Douglas James Cottrell, Trance, clairvoyant. We're talking earth changes. And before we get to Tom in Kentucky, who's been waiting patiently, let me go back to before the break. Are there people out there who are on the other side of this equation? In other words, evil-intended individuals who are steering hurricanes into harm's way using this same technique?
The answer is twofold. Yes, there are. There are people who can control the weather, and they do send bad things out there. And there are, by willful, this is black magic or the cursing prayers. You see in the Christian Bible where Jesus cursed a fig or a date tree, and it withered and died in one day. The power of prayer in a destructive way is just as powerful as a constructive way. And we as human beings have this power and this ability within us, whether we know it or not. But what we think about all day long is what we're praying for all day long. And with all the grief in the world, with all the hatred out there, with all the anger out there, we are making these earth changes come about. As a race mind, we are causing our own destruction. Again, what the Hopis were talking about as we have a way of salvaging ourselves and getting away from this, is to change our attitude in one thing only, like the Dalai Lama is saying, be more compassionate. which is what the Christ was all about and why he stood out from all the others. He was talking about be compassionate. And the situation is there are people out there who are, I'm sure, in their deluded way, they are attempting to cause harm. The hatred causes harm. And hatred is, in a spiritual way, is like taking a dagger and stabbing people with this invisible energy we call the spiritual energy, or energy, healing energy, if you will, to make a coin of phrase. It is real. And if you hate, you cause destruction. But you know what? It comes back to you. The only energy that is constructive is love and compassion, which comes back to you, makes you feel better. All the other emotions, when you send them out, affect you in a negative way as well. So there are people out there who are praying for the destruction of their enemies. And there are other people out there who are in the black areas, highly trained, and they are actually trying to hurt people that they target themselves.
All right, Tom is in Kentucky. Welcome to the Conspiracy Show, Tom. You're on the line with Douglas James Cottrell.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. I live here in an area called, known as Appalachia. And as you know, Edgar Casey was from Kentucky. And I hear all of these talk shows about it's not safe to be here, there when these events take place, and I believe they're going to happen. I just wonder how we fare here where I'm located, because this past winter was the most unusual winter. We actually only had one accumulating snowfall after a devastating set of tornadoes that came through in early March and killed probably a little over 100 people, which is generally unheard of in the hilly country of eastern Kentucky where I am. And then that was on March 2nd. And then on the 5th of March, we had a snowstorm where we had 6 inches of snow, heavy wet snow, and by the next day it was all gone. Now, so far it seems to me that this coming winter, I think we're going to have, and it's just a gut feeling, more snow and so forth. So I wonder if we're safer here than I'm sure we are than we would be in Washington, D.C. Just to give you a geographical coordinates, I'm 160 miles due south of Columbus, Ohio. So I just wonder what you think as far as if we're safe here or safer, or just what your thoughts are, especially about the weather and the coronal mass ejection. I'm an amateur radio operator, and I foresee the day when we will lose propagation, and it will not be coming back anytime soon. So your thoughts on these things.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Don't go near Washington, D.C., as we talked about earlier. As Tom was talking, I was looking, and he was very articulate in his descriptions, and we have talked about these things in the book, this weather pattern. Nostradamus was talking about in the future people will be very concerned about the weather. These are the indications of the atmosphere changing. We talked about the friction in the center of the Earth, and I'm going to get back to Tom's question quickly. And that this heating up at the core is heating up the oceans. This is why all these weather conditions are happening. Not the greenhouse effect. The oceans are heating up. 2 degrees is disastrous, and we're going to go to 3 or 4 degrees increase in heat. And this is what's going to precipitate all this difficulty. I see, as Tom was talking, I could see the snow coming. What I saw, the vision I had was he's going to be safe, but the lowlands in Kentucky will be flooded. So if you're on the lowlands, if you're down in the hilly country, we move up the hill a little bit or try to go a little higher. Windstorms, yes, but I see as much as the hilly country of Kentucky is as a result of crushing of the Earth's crust where the hills were formed. The only thing I see is water in the lowlands.
All right, Tom, forewarned, forearmed, as they say. Thank you for calling. The U.S. presidential election, we've got about 8-9 minutes here. Let's get into that a little bit. I was joking off air, not really joking, but I said it with a smile, I suppose, that sometimes I get caught up in the theater of the election, and is it going to be Obama, and is it going to be Romney? And then I have to catch myself and say, wait a minute, it really doesn't matter. I'm one who, maybe I'm a little cynical, but I believe the U.S. Election system is designed for continuity, so that it doesn't matter who you vote for. It's designed to give the electorate the illusion of choice, but whoever is elected, you will have continuity. You will have essentially the same policies. Certainly, I mean, do you remember seeing a presidential debate where the opponent agreed with the incumbent so many times? To me, that was very telling. But anyway, let me get your thoughts on the election, Douglas. Who do you see winning, and will it make a tinker's damn of difference?
Well, Obama is going to win the presidential election. I saw Rodney coming up first, and then I saw Obama with his hand in the air, pointing up with a finger like number one. And then I saw him step up on the stage or step up on a platform, which I think has happened now, where Rodney was pretty close. He had a good shot for it, but he's fading. And as I look in my mind now, he has not a frown on his face, but his lips are together, and I can see the President Obama smiling. So this is what I use. I look at the expression on the person's face to see if there's success or not. And I think President Obama will carry forward in his mandate, and I think that there will be a lot of people who will be very, very angry at him. I certainly have seen difficulties coming to him personally, and we've talked about that on the show before. And so there's going to be a lot of anger and hostility after the election.
And what do you see the next 4 years like? How is it going to play out? I mean, is the United States going to be able to climb out from under this crushing debt? Are they going to continue to print money and debase the value of the currency? What's going to happen in the next 4 years? The next 4 year cycle, I guess.
Well, the things in Spain are going to be disastrous. I've seen the 5 major banks in Spain in great difficulty. Basically, they're not going to get another rescue. I've seen that affecting the West, and I think that we're going to see hyperinflation coming. We're going to see shortages. We're going to see arbitrary increases in foodstuffs like corn and soybeans. If they're not already happening, they will soon happen. I've accurately predicted the gold up and down in your show over the years, and gold is going to continue to go up, and silver will double in price.
Let me ask you about that very quickly. We look at gold now, and it seems to have supported around 1550 and a lot of resistance below 1800. And yet you look at the uncertainty of the times. All the fundamentals are there. The gold should be, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 an ounce. Is it being manipulated? Why is gold stuck in this prison of $1,500, $1,600 an ounce?
My friend Robert Appel, who has been on the show, he's a good friend of ours and has been here with you and I in the past, has found out that there is an agency that they can draw on the money from the central banks to sell gold short. It was an agency that was started as a contingency in case there were problems. And instead of using their resources once in a while, they use it every day. And they use it on the short side. If you look at all the markets now, the terrorists, other people try to sell the markets down, or they try to do things to destroy the market so that the market moves very quickly to the downside. 9/11, there were a huge number of put options on the airlines. People knew it was going to happen. And these agencies are these people who are somewhat in the middle, have vast sums of money, can draw on, and they're suppressing artificially or deliberately, but perhaps might be a better word, the price of gold. I see gold at $2,500 easily. It's going to break through the $1,800 mark. The gold shares, gold mines are all going to go up as well, and it'll be the poor man's boom for that. This will, of course, lead into, as I've said, inflation going up 5 or 6 points past its all-time high, as it has been in the past. The economy will boom. Business will be good, but we're going to have shortages. America is becoming a third world country. All the jobs have gone, of course, to China, and if you look, China is now buying pipelines, they're buying resources, they're buying mines, so they can produce copper. This is really wise on their part. We here in Canada seem to be selling off all our assets to foreign powers. Not a smart place to be. So in essence, we're giving away the gold, if you pardon the pun, in our country, and this is going to cause us harm with superinflation coming.
You mentioned earlier war with Turkey. But how does Iran figure into all of this? I'm still at a loss, to make sense of the conflicting reports whether Iran, in fact, does have capability to make a bomb. At one point, intelligence agencies in Israel, who you would think would be in the know, were saying that they do not, and yet Netanyahu, perhaps he was using it as for political expediency. I suspect maybe he was claiming that they do, and then we had the International Atomic Energy Board saying that they do not have a nuclear program, and then they did about face, and now they say they do. It's back, it's forth.
Well, this is where people use me all the time, Richard. Whether somebody's asking for a health reading in a condition that nobody else can find out, which I'm able to see, or businessmen are coming about their business, which I'm able to predict things about their business or prophesize what's going on in the world.
Does Iran have nuclear capabilities?
I was just going to say that. He must be psychic. Yes, they do. They have suitcase bombs. They're dirty bombs. I've seen that. I've also seen that Israel is ready to pull the trigger. What I have is like a huge gun with somebody's finger on the trigger, and if Iran moves or flinches, they are going to be destroyed. And I've said this before, and it's in the book about nuclear war can happen in the tinderbox in the Middle East, and I believe if so much as a wrong move happens, boom, we have war. I've also seen military bases in Spain, American military bases, ready to fly to Iran. So they're surrounded. If you will, the wagons are circled in Iran. If they so much as make a threat or a move, they're going to be destroyed, and they know it, and that's what's keeping them in place.
Quick, back to the phones. I think we have time for this. Phil? No, we don't have time for this. Okay, sorry, we got to wrap.
Sorry, Phil.
Yeah, sorry about that, Phil. Next time. Douglas, wow, life is not a bowl of cherries. I mean, that must be difficult for you to see this bleakness out there, but yet you're saying at the end, there will be this new renaissance. We will survive. There will be heaven on earth?
We're going to see the emergence of the ancient spiritual practice, the law of one. You're going to be hearing a lot about this in the future. The law of one is a compassionate law. It's how we can get out of this mess. We care for each other. The golden rule will come to a single world consciousness. I don't want to say religion, a consciousness. It will be compassion. The law of one. Remember that. You're going to hear a lot about it.
The new renaissance. Douglas, always a pleasure, and congratulations on the new website, which I guess is being sort of formally launched tonight.
Yes, we're launching DouglasJamesCottrell.com, the new WordPress website here on your show tonight, my friend.
An honor. Thank you. And people can click on your name on my homepage, and that'll take you right to DouglasJamesCottrell.com. Thank you, Douglas.
They can also buy the book at the Conspiracy Culture bookstore, by the way.
Excellent. Thank you.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe at StrangePlanetPodcast.com.